Suppose you are ready to go on a delightful vacation with some of your friends and on a plane while just imagining your dream trip to Miami. Suddenly, you feel some bad turbulence, and unluckily, they continue to grow worse. A few moments later, you realize that the plane you are traveling in has inclined and later on, boom! You open your eyes, look around and realize that your plane has crashed, and you are one of the few people who survived. Sounds scary, right? Well, in this video, we are going to tell you about a plane crash incident that was way scarier and creepier than this short tale. So without wasting any time, let's get started. On October 12, 1972, the Uruguayan Air Force 571 plane took off from Uruguay's capital, Montevideo. On board were 5 crew members and 40 passengers. The passengers were a large group of friends who were going to Chile for a game of social football. Not long after takeoff, the plane ran into bad weather and was forced to land in Argentina. The next day, on Friday the 13th, the journey continued from Mendoza to Santiago. After they left Mendoza, the pilot who made the same flight 29 times before headed south to cross the Andes. But this time, he made a fatal miscalculation. Thinking he had crossed the highest point, he turned north and began to descend. However, the plane was still in Argentina on the wrong side of the Andes. And so, this miscalculation turned out to be a great mistake, and the plane crashed on the Andes out of nowhere. The passengers who were laughing a moment before were now clueless what happened. One of the passengers, named Nando Parado, remembered that his head got hit by something and then he fainted, as the witnesses said that he went into a coma for a few days. The initial crash killed 12 people, including the pilot. Luckily, 33 survived. The survivors were left with no warm clothes, and their only food was a bottle of white rum and 2 bars of chocolate. Surrounded by nothing but rocks and snow, they were standing hopeless in the Andes. As the night came, many of them started screaming, crying, and shivering from loneliness and fear. As soon as the sun rose on Saturday morning, they felt a bit relieved looking at the sun rising between the ranges of the Andes. That day, 2 planes flew above them and neither one saw them. Meanwhile, Nando Parado, who had hit his head, was slowly coming back from the coma. His friends were trying to speak to him, but as he was in a coma, he was unable to reply. Believing Nando had died, they placed his body with the other dead outside the plane. There, Nando's head was in the snow where the freezing temperature stopped his brain from swelling, and that mistake by his friends kept him alive. After a few hours, Nando woke up and asked about his mother and sister, about which he came to know that his mother had died, and the sister was about to die in a few hours as she was badly injured. That day, while searching the plane, the survivors found a camera and a radio. 6 to 7 days passed like that, and then on the 10th day, while listening to the radio, they heard the search for them had been called off, marking their chance of survival almost zero. The friends were alone with no help coming, and on the brink of starvation. But then, the choice was made that saved their lives. During a late-night conversation between Carlitos and Nando, Carlitos said, "Nando, nothing is left from the chocolates." To which Nando replied, "I'm going to eat the pilot." Nando explained his decision by saying, "What are we going to do? We have to eat, and the only proteins are the dead bodies of the people that were in this plane." Everyone opposed this at first, but then they realized that they had no choice left than to eat their dead colleagues if they wanted to come out alive. They described it as the worst nightmare one could ever experience, as eating someone's organs while knowing that you were laughing with the same being a few days back. They somehow convinced themselves to eat the fried meat, but unable to light a fire, they ate the flesh raw. On the 18th day, an avalanche hit like lightning and buried 27 of the guys. More than a dozen men lost their lives that day. As time passed and hope was fading, the remaining survivors realized that they had to cross the Andes and find help. On December 12, 2 months after the plane crash, Nando Parado and Roberto Canessa left the crash site and headed west, while Carlitos and others decided to stay. They had no equipment, no climbing experience, and their only food was human flesh wrapped in football socks. It took them 3 days to climb the first mountain, and almost 12 days to clear the whole range. They were exhausted and lost hope countless times, but yet they decided to move on until they either die or find a destination. That perseverance paid off because at one point there was no more snow and a river appeared. On the other side of the river, they spotted a Chilean farmer. The farmer, Sergio, took a rock, put paper around it, and together with a pencil threw it across the water. Nando wrote that they came from a crashed plane and that he and his friends needed help. The farmer also threw them bread, and then help was called. Back at the crash site, site, Carlitos and others felt cherished at the moment they heard the helicopter arriving. At last, 16 men were saved and 29 out of 45 died. After the dust from the plane crash settled, Carlitos turned his experience into a career. He spent years traveling the world and talking about his near-death encounter. Roberto Canessa gave his life to medicine and became a children's heart specialist. He also ran for president of Uruguay, whereas Nando Parado became a race car driver for 25 years. To them, their horrific experience was their life changer, as it taught them the true meaning of living life at its fullest and living in the moment. Make sure you don't learn this lesson the hard way. So in order to stay happy, start living in the present. By the way, do you want to listen to more such stories about these kind of incidents? Let me know in the comments down below.